All right, so I don't do a lot of quick reviews. Usually I do the overall big album reviews, like the new Muse albums and Arctic Monkeys albums and all that. But there's some bands and artists, like Billie Eilish being an artist, that I'm not big into and don't know a lot about. And sometimes I'll just listen to the albums, and if they're really talked about and popular, I might give my thoughts on it and whatever, and not do as in-depth of a review. Just basic thoughts. I listened to the whole album this morning, and I was like, okay. I definitely had some popular opinions and some unpopular opinions about the whole thing. I definitely felt very mixed by the end, which I think is probably what a debut album for somebody that's 17 years old probably should be, mixed opinions, just because it's a debut album by someone my age. It's not going to be perfect by any means, but some people are heralding it as one of the best albums of the decade so far. I think that's partially because this thing has been marketed very well. I think everyone, at least in my age group, knows who she is now. She has exploded, and each one of those singles and the big songs that were coming out leading up to this release were huge. You couldn't escape some of them. But overall, with this album, I definitely liked it. I think I did like it. I did have an overall positive view of this album. Coming out of it, there was a lot of moments that I was like, "This is pretty good." And a lot of parts of it, I was like, yeah, I'll listen to this again. I don't think there's anything I added to my big playlist of my favorite songs ever or anything like that, even though there were some that honestly came close. But I overall liked it, and it did not have a good start. I wasn't a big fan of the first couple tracks. I'm tired of songs about Xanax. Like, it's one of the topics that I try to stay away from because they just bore me to death. And Bad Guy was not my favorite full, I guess you call it the album opener, apart from the little exclamation marks track. But Bad Guy was not good. I think I gave it a 2 out of 10 in my notes. I was not impressed. I'm not a big trap beats guy, but the overall producing of this, even though they did use a lot of trap beats, I thought the producing was really good. This was by her brother, who I think is 21. He definitely made a name for himself with his production of this album and the music. I wasn't a big fan of all of it, but it was fresh, unique. I thought the production was interesting. That's why I was starting to get more hooked on it as we went along. Now, I know a lot of people say that they really like the emotional songs and the quieter songs and the softer songs. I didn't really care for them myself. That was not really the part of the album that I really liked, and part of it was I didn't get the emotional connection to a lot of these tracks. I just didn't feel it as much as I have on some other albums, which I've heard mixed feelings. I've heard people say either that it feels cardboard and just cut out and boring, while I've heard other people say it's one of the most emotionally resonant albums of the decade, and I can see both sides. I personally just found it to be a little bit cardboard cutout and a little bit generic in terms of some of the emotional themes. I did really like some of the experimental songs though. One of my favorite tracks, probably my favorite track off of the whole thing, was All the Good Girls Go to Hell. I really liked that. I was enjoying that a lot. I also really liked Bury a Friend. And I did not like that at first because a track called Bury a Friend, you'd think that would be really depressing. But that really started to grow on me. And by the end, I was like, hell yeah, I was hooked. And I did find the second half, I think a lot of people have said the second half is better than the first half. And I do agree with that. I thought the ending was pretty alright. Goodbye was an okay closer. I thought the whole thing was just pretty good overall, consistently. When the Party's Over is, of course, a very popular track by her. I remember when that was released, that was huge. And for good reason. I can understand why people like it. There's a lot of unique and creative ideas explored there. And it's one of her best written songs, I think. So it's definitely one of the highlights off the album as well. Some of the weird stuff, like My Strange Addiction, I could have lived without. I didn't really understand that song. I know a lot of people have been talking about that song. That's been one of the more discussed tracks and buzzed about tracks. I guess maybe after another listen, because I might actually give this album a re-listen. I don't really have the motivation to, because it's not an album that I necessarily want to re-listen to again. But I think it might be one that's essential to understand it fully. But maybe it'll grow on me. I think that a lot of tracks do grow on me over time, especially weirder tracks and more experimental tracks. I found that with Simulation Theory. I was not a big Propaganda or Break It To Me fan. Or even, looking at Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. Bat Phone took a while to grow on me. But when they do grow on me, sometimes they become my favorite tracks. And when there are ones that stand out right away, that are different, that are weird, like Bury a Friend, for example, like Bravo, that could grow on me even more and become one of my favorite songs. I don't think that one will, just because Billie Eilish isn't my kind of artist, but I do appreciate the work that she put in here, and I do appreciate this album overall. I think it's a good album. I don't think it's an excellent album, but this is her first effort, and I think we have to bring attention to the fact that in the years to come, and I said this multiple times, I felt the potential. I really feel that with more experience, with more songs being written, with having criticism, if she takes in some of the criticism and learns from this album, and her brother continues to improve his craft of being a great producer, we could see some top-notch pop music in the next few years from her, and she could really become the queen of pop. And I truly believe that because she took off, the marketing was amazing, and this album has taken off already. This album has become huge, and there's a lot of big fans of her, and I think that this is a great direction. This is a great effort, and I think debut albums have to be taken with a grain of salt, because I view a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 debut album as a success, because you're just starting out as an artist, you're finding your way, and if you're able to top that off with another album, then if you're able to keep bringing out more albums, and if you improve on that one, which usually they do, some bands like Arctic Monkeys have that amazing debut, and even though everything else is amazing, still can't quite touch that magic, although I think Tranquility Base was close. I think with Billie Eilish, she seems like an artist that's ready to improve, and actually I think we've seen the improvement already. And again, she's my age. She's a little younger than me, so I think that makes it more impressive as well. One last thing I want to mention, though, one negative I had with the album was I Wish You Were Gay. Definitely not one of my favorite songs. It was by far my least favorite song off the album. I think a lot of people were expecting some sort of experimentation song, some sort of LGBTQ experimentation-based song. Instead, what we got out of it was a song that, because you rejected me, I hope it's 'cause you're gay. And that's being talked about very problematic. It's being talked about as being homophobic. I think that there's a tendency to stretch everything. I don't view it as homophobic, but I view it as kind of shallow, and I think with the title I Wish You Were Gay, everyone is expecting something along the lines of being about experimentation. The whole thing's a little uncomfortable, I think, and it sucks that it's one of the biggest songs off the album, and I know a lot of people are really hyping that up, including people that are gay themselves. I don't think are really cluing into the fact that it's kind of a shallow song and is not a good representation of the gay movement at all. And I think that most people with a brain who really analyze the lyrics agree, but I think it's I don't want to say it's homophobic or too problematic, but I just think it's kind of dumb and shallow, and I think she could have thought it through better. I think that she could have written a much better song. I know it comes from a true story, but really, was it? Well, really, I don't know. I'm not a fan of that one. But guys, I thought this album was pretty good. I mentioned 6, 7, somewhere in that range. I'm not going to give it a final score or anything. But I thought it was pretty good apart from that one song. I thought the production was really interesting. I thought it was interesting. I wasn't bored by it at all. I thought it was going to be boring at first with maybe the first couple tracks were really like, huh? But I wasn't bored. I enjoyed myself listening to it, and I'd recommend it. Maybe not the best album ever, but I think that there's a lot of potential there, and I enjoyed myself. So thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know what your thoughts are on this album below, and I'll see you guys all later. Goodbye, everybody.